Hello, everybody. Welcome back to an episode of Match Review. I'm Joshua Howard, and today we're going to be doing a match review of David Purcell versus Cameron. I don't know how to say your last name. A quick Google made me think it's Zareie, but we'll find out. We'll find out if he ends up commenting on this video. Anyway, this was a match that was played at the Cherokee Open this last weekend. Between David Purcell playing a variant of Doombolt Guard versus Cameron playing Houndpack Lance with a bit of an unusual or a different take on the detachment than something I often see. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So to start off with, let's go ahead and talk about David Purcell's list. So he is running a Cadian Castellan, a Cadian Command Squad, 3 Scion Command Squads, Nork Deadog, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 20 Cadians, 2 Chimeras, 3 Kazarkin, 3 5-man Krieg Engineers, and then 3 5-man Scions. So this is very similar to a list that I've played in the past. The one that I took to Portland last time, we had an extra Chimera, 10 more Cadians, and we got rid of 5 Scions and the Scion Command Squad. And this is very, very similar to a list that I have played in the past. It is a rather aggressive list. You have a lot of scouting infantry that are going to be moving forward. And on top of that, you have a really powerful second wave with the 3 units of 10 Scions. It's just a lot of pressure. You're going to be getting right in your opponent's face. You're going to be asking them, how can you deal with all this 4-up save infantry with usually, like, there's not a ton of armies that have the volume necessary to do it in shooting, and the ones that do have it in melee, in general, when you're going to be crashing into 60-point units of 5 Krieg Engineers or crashing into the Chimeras, you are going to just immediately die afterwards to the follow-up of 30 Scions and 2 Rogaldorn Commanders. So it does a lot of damage, and there's not a ton of armies that can deal with it particularly well right now in the meta. David was playing under David Purcell at the event. His elos, realistically, like when he was not making his protests about the elo system in general, he was in like the low to mid 1800s. I don't remember exactly where he was, but he was pretty far up there. His opponent, Cameron, ended up going 5-2 at the event, and as far as I know, this is a relatively accurate elo at 1540. 1.9, but going 5-0 on the first 2 days of Cherokee, still very impressive, especially with a detachment that you don't see nearly as often. He was playing Houndpack Lance, so Houndpack Lance makes all of your War Dogs, what's the term, battle line, so you can take 6 of each of them, and then it gives you the option to make a couple of them characters, and then it has a couple of really important stratagems. The first one is reactive move. When you have the reactive move, whenever something moves within 9, you get to just move flat 6 in any direction you want, which is like okay. The biggest thing about this is, one, your base is like 3.5, 4 inches wide. It's a pretty big base, so you have to be very cognizant of where you're placing your models in order to use the reactive moves well. You have to be thinking about it a turn in advance in order to use these reactive moves rather effectively. The other one, the really important one that it has, is shoot on death. Whenever you are shot or fought to death for 1 CP, you can shoot back or fight back, and then you explode immediately afterwards. Or you do your roll for deadly demise. This is really important, and one of the things that I will be talking about quite a bit through the course of this game is the fact that Cameron never did this. Cameron, I'm not sure if he thought that it didn't work the way that it does, or he was trying to do something else with it. But one of the big things about this is, if Scions shoot a Brigand, in particular to death, the one with the chain gun and the melta gun, a Brigand is going to kill, on average, 4 to 6 Scions on the shoot on death. You have to remember that because you count as being bracketed, you count as being at 1 wound, you are -1 to hit. So you're going to be killing like 4 to 6 Scions in the open, or realistically like 3 to 5 Scions in cover, which is like not a ton, but considering this is an army that really relies on having a lot of things that are not nearly as durable now that they are toughness 9 as they used to be, you really need to be looking for opportunities to trade into your opponent. And if you can do that and alleviate some of your ability to shoot on the next turn, it is a really big deal. Those are the 2 stratagems you really see. The third one that kind of comes up is you have an uppy downy, so you have the ability to pick up a I think it's just one War Dog, but it needs to be close to a board edge, I think, and then you can put it in strategic reserves, which is cute. Didn't come up this game as far as I can tell, but it is one of those things where just having the ability to rapid ingress every single turn of the game is potentially rather threatening. Going over the list, Cameron came out with 4 brigands, one of which is a character. I don't know what the character does in this detachment. I don't think it really mattered all that much. These guys have 2 guns. You have the chain gun, which I think is like 12 shots at 611, 621, something like that, and then a Melta spear or a thermal lance, whatever the chaos version of that's called. So it's 2 shots at, I think it's 12 for D6, 18-inch range, Melta 4. So if it does get close into vehicles, it'll do a minimum of 5 damage and could do potentially up to 11 damage, which is a lot. However, it is only 18-inch range, and it is very easy to pre-measure against these units as long as you are paying attention to what you are doing. 3 carnivores, so these guys are the full melee. You have both like the claw and the sword, and then you have the indirect hit. I don't remember what the rule is. I think it's like reroll advances or something. It's not a particularly impressive rule. It's a lot worse than it used to be. But they chop pretty good. And then it was 6. Did I put too many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 stalkers. So these, I think it's Scout 6, and then they have a. I think all of them had the claw, so it's like 4 attacks at like 14, 3, d6 plus 2, or something like that. It's not a lot of attacks. And then you also have the same meltas on these that the brigands have. So it's like it's a fair amount. It's decent at opening vehicles. However, the ability to kill infantry is very much focused in these 4 brigands, and then everything else is much better at fighting bigger things. He's also got a unit of 3 Nurglings. They infiltrate, they stand places, and a unit of 10 Plague Bearers to stand on his home and sticky it. So fairly normal, fairly interesting. The big thing that you typically see with Houndpack Lance, in a lot of similar lists, as I find it, is typically you will have more carnivores. It's way more common to see like 6 carnivores. A lot of people consider them the most um, independent and powerful war dog available. However, the 6 stalkers here, they are a little bit cheaper. It might open an ability to take like an extra unit of demons or something like that. And the other big thing that they do is because they all scout, you can put a lot of pressure on your opponent right off the bat. So, uh, this one was played on Search and Destroy, Games Workshop Layout 4. So Games Workshop Layout 4 is, in my opinion, one of the weaker GW layouts that we do have. So you have like really big firing line here. This is like forever firing line. This firing line is really long, similar to this one. And then you have like you have to be like here, but like it's pretty far down here to shoot this way. It's just very, very open. The one thing that makes this a little bit better than some other maps is the fact that there is this like pocket that you can stand here that is really difficult to shoot. So as long as you have like something just standing over on this objective, it is relatively safe from shooting threats. The other big thing that you have to think about on this map really hard is whoever goes first is going to take their stuff and it's going to go from like here and it can go to like here where it is very difficult. Even if you deployed like a tank on the line and went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Like that line is not that deep. If you went an extra 3, 1, 2, 3 with move, 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 it's still like reasonably deep, but you can hide from it very consistently if you want. And that's assuming that they want to be going directly at you out this way. It is search and destroy, so this distance is like 13, and then the farthest is like 18 across. Knights move pretty fast, so they can be on top of you very quickly. The mission was Linchpin, so that is hold your home for 3, and then hold everything else for 5. It does cap at 15, so you can go, so you can't get more than 15 points per turn. And then whoever goes second of course, scores a lot. So one of the big things about this mission, I've been talking to a lot of my coaching clients recently about this, but one of the big things to think about is trying to figure out what the primary is likely to look like in this kind of game. And because it's fairly hard to stand on, like, you just can't stand on this objective, you just die. Whoever can, like, stand over here and then not get shot, or and then stand, like, over here and not get shot, it's not uncommon on this board to be going, like, 8, 8, 8, 8, and then at some point one of these is likely to be a 3, so it'll be like 8, 3, and then whoever goes first is going to be like 8, 8, 8, and then 15. Right? This is generally what is going to be like the general flow of primary on this board is most typically going to look like. And so it's whoever's going first is generally going to be looking to be down somewhere between 5 and 10 primary over the course of the game, unless they can stop their opponent from scoring at the end. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about some quick keys to the matchup. The first one is don't get rushed down as the guard player. This is a lot of dogs running at you. Dogs are like T9, 3 up, 5 up, and I think it's 14 wounds, more or less. They're not that durable, and the fact that they are toughness 9 does mean that they will kind of die. However, it's also a lot of dogs. You have 6, 3, it is 13 dogs that are just going to be running at you if they want. So one of the big things that you do have to be careful about is oftentimes when you have the Scions, people's first thought is I'm going to put these Scions in reserve. They have Deep Strike. They're going to be coming in later. However, because it is Search and Destroy and because you're playing up against these Chaos Knights with all the War Dogs, you need to have enough assets on the board. So one of the things that you'll oftentimes see or should be at least considering if you have 30 Scions in reserve, start one of them on the board, either in a transport or somewhere where they can contribute to the game immediately. It is not their favorite thing to do, but they still do the same amount of damage getting out of a transport. They still do the same amount of damage standing on the board as they would from Deep Strike. They just don't have the same mobility. Be aware of the shoot on death. So, like we were talking about before, the Brigand shoot on death kills 4 to 6 Scions in the open and 3 to 5 in cover. And just as importantly, if you somehow kill like a Krieg or a Krieg engineer unit shoots a dog to death, you could potentially just lose the entire unit from the shoot on death like immediately. So that does have to be something you think about. The last one is you want to be winning the late game. If you go first as this guard list, you can actually put a fair amount of pressure on your opponent immediately because you will be putting small things on the objectives and demanding your opponent deal with them, and then you're like, haha, now you're standing on objectives, die, I am guard, you can't do that. We don't have the reroll ones to wound anymore from the detachment. However, Scions still do that, and if you're standing on these objectives, Dorns are just going to kill. A Dorn can very plausibly kill 2 Dorns by itself every time it activates. So you do have plenty of damage to get through this, and you have a ton of Meltamines as well. However, dogs do have a decent amount of OC. They are going to be very fast. A lot of these Houndpack Lance matches are very focused on just denying your primary. They oftentimes don't score super well themselves, but if they can stop their opponent from scoring a ton of points, then it sometimes doesn't matter if you don't have a ton of points yourself because you have more than your opponent. So the later the game goes, as you remove the carnivores, as you remove more of the stalkers, it becomes harder and harder to kill the Dorns. It's just easier and easier to pre-measure your opponents, and you can give your opponents like the Melta shots as long as they're not getting Melta 4. Because you can smoke, you can be in cover, you can have access to Armor of Contempt, you can reroll a save. It's going to be really, really hard as long as they're not shooting like 4 Melta dogs at a Dorn. You're really unlikely to die. So you should generally be expecting to be down on primary relatively early, but if you go second, you can get a lot of primary points later in the game. And the other big part of this is if you're going first, you kind of got to table your opponent a lot of the time on this board in particular because you are so close together. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the deployment. So this is what the deployment looks like overall. I'm not sure what all of these dogs are, to be honest. I will identify them a little bit more in a moment, but we can see we have Krieg engineers here. More Krieg engineers painted by a different player, more Krieg engineers, 1 unit of Khazarkin. This Chimera has Scions inside it. This Chimera has Khazarkin inside it. We have our Dorn here, another Dorn here. The big Nork brick is spread out something like this. And then we have another Khazarkin unit here. So immediately after, we also do end up having Cameron goes first. And so this is what our scout moves look like afterwards. So there's a couple small things that I kind of want to point out here in the scout moves. And one of the big things I'll talk about in some of my videos, whenever I'm doing coaching for clients, if you are going first and you have scout moves, you are going to scout directly at your opponent. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You just want to scout directly forward and like as close to getting into combat as possible. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, You just want to be closer. If the secondaries that you draw or the game plan that you have necessitates getting into combat immediately, you want to make that easier for yourself. The other big thing is if you don't do it, let's imagine, or this is a great example actually. Cameron ends up scouting down over this way with a couple of the stalkers. He could have gone here anyway, right? The what he I think he ends up doing with this stalker is like it comes and stands on this objective. But you can do that, right? Like maybe it's not the same stalker, but maybe it's the one behind it by moving here and then walking around. This is something that you can do anyway. Or if you want to go hide behind this ruin, you can still do that anyway, right? There's not a ton that's going to be stopping you. The other big thing is, in general, there's a couple units that are a bit out of position in this game already. And the first one is this carnivore from Cameron over here on the far left. This is just really far from anything. I would really have liked to see this exact same stalker like stand here and then move either this way or maybe stand behind these guys and move this way, just so it's participating in the game a little bit faster. It is stalkers are like not super impressive damage pieces. They're mostly just taken because I think they're the cheapest war dog. But this war dog is not really going to be participating in the game very heavily. A very similar thing can be said. It's a little bit harder to see, but there is a unit of Kazarkin on the far side, kind of hidden by the dice tray here. But this unit of Kazarkin is also really, really far from the game. This unit of Kazarkin scouting backwards, there's a couple places where I would have preferred it to be. The first one is like here. And there's a couple big parts for it. One, you can hide from this angle pretty reasonably. And two, you want to be able to move on to this objective with ideally a 9-inch move. And this unit of Kazarkin can do that, but this unit of Kazarkin cannot. I believe even if this ends up rolling like a 6 on an advance, this is 6. I'm going to touch my screen really quick, and it's super gross. So 12 is going to pitch you about here. So if you roll like a 4 or a 5, somewhere in there with move, 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 maybe this unit can touch the objective. Otherwise, it's just really far, and the only thing it will ever really have an opportunity to shoot on turn 1 is if Cameron just sends units here and like just full sends over here. Whereas if this Kazakin unit was instead like here or here, it could participate in the game a little bit faster. It's unfortunately just like lost like 4 to 5 inches of movement realistically across a lot of the models here. This scout makes sense. This one is a little bit interesting. I would have definitely considered just like having it up on the wall or somewhere else, but it's safe enough. I think there was a way for him to have moved such that it's even harder to shoot on this line, but it's fine. And then this guy, I think, hanging out was also a bit of a problem. But overall, I think the scout moves, by and large, are okay. This is good. I like this. These guys, I think, should have gone like here. I would have loved for this guy to be here or here joining these guys, but otherwise, it seems to make a little bit of sense. One of the other things that we have before the game really starts, before we even get into turn 1, is Chaos Knights have a couple of choices in what they can do. I don't know all of them, but there's a couple ones that are really, really important for going up against Guard. And let me find them. The one that you almost always take is if you are not within 18, so if you're 18 inches away or battle shocked, you are -1 to hit in shooting, also maybe melee, but definitely shooting. And we are on an incredibly open board here. So kind of like we were looking at, this angle is really long. This angle is forever. This angle is forever. This angle is forever. This angle's forever. This angle's forever. And then realistically, even like this, like these angles are still pretty far. You're going to be getting shot beyond 18 inches quite a bit. Every Chaos Knight player I know of will just auto take this against Guard. The only real reason to not take it in Battle Round 1 if you're playing Chaos Knights into Guard is if you are committed to the idea of you are going to full send at the very beginning of the game. You're just going to go right up in their face, and you will just never be outside of 18 inches, so you're not going to be getting the benefits of the -1 to hit. However, if you are going to be doing the Dread Aura, which is the minus, or you must take a battle shock if you're below starting, you need to be full sending, right? This is not a Dread Aura that we can take if we are not full sending, because as we'll kind of talk about, it ends up costing Cameron like an entire dog over the course of this game, not having the -1 to hit. Okay, with all that said already, let's go ahead and start talking about what actually happens in the game. So this is what happens. Cameron ends up drawing Assassination, tempting target. You can see it down here in the bottom right. And David ends up declaring the tempting target as the middle. I don't hate this. You know your opponent is going to be touching every single objective if they want to, but the tempting target here says, please stand in the middle. I would like to shoot you. And 5 points is generally something where you really have to think about doing it. Assassination, really not happening. There's not really a lot of characters on here, but this is kind of what we were looking at before, right? What I really wanted to see happen in this game from Cameron is this entire army is deployed like here, and we are going. One of the big reasons for this is, one, Guard gets access to a ton of damage on turn 2 when we get access to all of the Scions, and you really want to end the game before that happens. So I really want to see like all of these knights just going for it. The other major reason why I'm not a huge fan of this macro game plan that Cameron has is he's putting a lot of knights in places where they are going to be more than 18 inches away from their opponent, right? By moving into here, you're moving into the firing line of the Dorn. By moving here, you're moving into a firing line of a Dorn. By moving here, you're moving into firing line of a Dorn. And they're all going to be shooting at you from more than 18 inches away. So not having that -1 to hit basically army-wide ends up really, really hurting. Instead, we end up showing, I think these are both Brigands, and then Stalker. These guys move to be relatively safe. I do like putting a War Dog of some kind over here, but then this one moves a little bit in order to pull a bit of line of sight over there. But overall, this is very much a staging turn. But we'll go ahead and talk about some of the problems of that in a little bit. The shooting ends up going through, and every single one of these War Dogs does have the indirect hat. So it's a mortar. I think it's D6 shots at 501, and then blast. And they're going to be hitting on 4s, so they don't do a whole lot. The other really big thing to know about this matchup is because they're 5-0-1, and basically all of the Guard like infantry in this army does have a 4-up save base. They're going to be saving on 3s, so you're not really actually going to be killing very many Guardsmen with your indirect hats in this matchup. If it was against something that had like more 5-up save space or 6-up save space like Kroot or something, they become a lot more valuable, but you don't actually do that much chip. Cameron did a lot more chip here than I actually expected him to. But anyway, gets some shots down over here, kills like half of this Krieg Engineer unit, and then this guy comes out this way. I don't know if this... I don't think this actually does any damage with its shooting, but the bigger point is it's a very like staging turn. And then the one during the fighting phase, we do have Cameron. He does hit the 6-inch charge into the Chimera, does end up killing the Chimera, tags engineers, and the Khazarkin are going to get out this way. So overall, he ends up getting one Chimera, does some mixed damage, and like shatters a bunch of Guard units. But one of the big things that I always like to say about Guard units is they are very top-heavy. Most of them have like some number of ablative lasgun dudes where they don't really contribute to the damage output. And every single one of these units, the Khazarkin and the Krieg Engineers have 2 dudes with just lasguns or shotguns or sometimes trench clubs. Doesn't really matter. And then the Khazarkin, the first like 4 dudes have lasguns, and then one of them has a sniper, and then one of them has a plasma pistol. And then you get into the meat. So you need to realistically kill like 6 dudes out of a Khazarkin unit before you meaningfully affect the damage output into anything big. And then you need to kill every single one of the Krieg engineers in this matchup, because after the two lasguns, they also have two flamers, and flamers don't do any damage in this matchup. And then the one guy, the one, as David Purcell called it, the Game Boy, is going to be doing almost all of the damage per unit in this matchup. So if you don't full wipe every single one of these, it ends up getting bad pretty quick. So overall, he does like some damage to engineers, does some damage to Kazarkan here, does some damage to the Cadians. Not a ton of real damage. He does get the tempting target for 5 points, and then let's go ahead and talk into David's turn. So, this is a guard channel, if you aren't familiar. Welcome to the Joshi 40K talking about guard and all that fun stuff. Let's go ahead and take a look at the things that we want to accomplish on this turn for guard. So one of the big things that I was kind of talking about before, the first one is, of course, you want to be able to deny this objective. David got a little bit unlucky that he lost as many Kazarkin as he did here. He ended up rolling a lot of 1s and 2s on his saves. So this denial is no longer an option. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted this Kazarkin unit able to do that. But even if it was like a couple inches closer, it would have been able to come over here. You don't care about the damage that this Stalker is going to do. It's got 2 Melta shots and D6 of the mortar shots. You're going to be saving on 3s or 4s. And then, like, cool, if you blast 2 lasguns to death with the Melta, it is what it is. So we would really like to take them off of this, but it's not really possible without being a psycho. We did draw Storm Hostile, so we could storm here, or here, or here. Doesn't really matter. So we can send the Scions out this way, but that is a lot of commitment right off the bat. If the Scions were to come out, they would love to be able to get shots here and killing this, but the much safer thing to do is put out the Engineers here and see what Cameron actually does. Other things that we need to do, we really need to kill this dog. This dog needs to die. It's right up in our face. We want to get rid of it. We're looking as like stretch goals. We would like to kill this dog. Depending on what happens with the other dogs, we would consider being able to kill this dog, and then we're going to be shooting down this alley. These guys can come out this way to create a move block. You can consider sending out these Kazarkin to create a move block, but otherwise you're just kind of moving around the board and you're trying to limit the damage that your opponent can actually do to you. We would really like this turn if at the end of it Cameron was holding this objective and this objective. We would really like to take this one, and I promise I'm going to stop harping on this at some point, but the fact that these Kazarkin can't do it ends up making this game closer than it potentially needed to be. So as we go ahead and take a look at the movement, we do see here that David comes out, and the reactive move away from the objective does leave this dog relatively safe. There was a bit of movement over on this side, and you can see that this guy, I have another red arrow, he moved a little bit. Good sportsmanship stuff from David here on saying like, hey, this Doran can see that guy, and Cameron being like, oh, I definitely didn't want to get seen there. Do you mind if I just move back? And David's like, yeah, it's totally fine. I can still see this one anyway. Anyway, so that happened. Kazarkin that like moved a little bit. We get a little bit of movement here. Kazarkin move into kind of a spot that I wanted them to be in the first place. And then Engineers come out here. Remember, Storm Hostile only cares who controlled it at the beginning of the turn. You don't need to take it in some other way. So just having the one Engineer here will, in fact, secure Storm Hostile. Other than that, it's a relatively slow turn coming out from David, right? You end up just moving some guys over here, and you end up overcommitting guys to kill this, which is totally fine. They don't have anything else that they really need to do. During the shooting phase, ends up going a little bit better than I think we really were expecting. Ends up killing both this dog and then this one. Kind of like I said, a Doran can pick up 2 dogs in a single activation, and that's not really surprising. This Doran only did like 5 damage or only did 9 damage between that and like Meltas and the remote mine, the Game Boy, going into this dog. So having this dog still alive is a bit surprising. It might have been a split fire. I don't remember exactly. But we've accomplished several of our major goals, right? We killed this dog. We killed this dog. We did damage here. And then in the charge phase, David does hit the charge, So he does get the Kazakhin in here, and this is really big. There's not a fallback and do things stratagem in the Houndpack Lance, so that means that this guy's kind of stuck. These can't really go this way, and any further attack is going to have to come out this direction. The Meltamine doesn't go off, so maybe this could have died, but regardless, he gets a Storm Hostile, he blocks off this major spot, and there's not really a real threat coming out over this direction. So we've accomplished several of our major goals. We get our Storm Hostile, we got to bring it down, we're up several points on secondaries, and now we go into our opponent's turn. Okay, so just taking quick stock of the game overall, one of the major things we wish we could have done is, again, take this objective. The fact that Chaos Knights is getting a 13 up in the top left is a problem. We really wanted this to be an 8. The fact that it's a 13 does mean that the game gets a little bit scary if a couple of our opponent's turns go well for them. However, we are up 8 points of secondary to 5 points of secondary from the Chaos Knights, so we have a little bit of an advantage there, and we're going second, so we should expect to have a bit of a primary advantage going into the last parts of the game. Okay. The other major thing, though, that makes this game totally fine but still like in the balance is Guard is not getting all in. We were looking at, we didn't want to get all in to turn 1, and we didn't want to get all in to turn 2. However, like we're talking about, this is not real. You can't really get anything that you want to over here. This, I think there's like 4 inches, so like 4, 5, 6, and then I think they move 14, so like 8 gets like 6, 8 gets you to like here-ish if you want. But this is like not that far, and if they don't move 14, then it's like really not that far. You're only making real charges here, or you could be a psycho and like try and hit a charge into this door. And then this similar thing, it just can't get that far. So we have avoided the major loss condition already. We're not getting all in on turn 1, we're not getting all in on turn 2, and that means in the bottom of 2, we're going to kill a ton of dogs. We will have a lot of opportunity to do that. The fact that, again, our opponent has more primary than we want is not the best thing in the world, but we can live with it. Going into the movement phase, Cameron does a couple of things that I'm a little bit less convinced about. So the first one, this dog and this dog moving backwards, I think is already starting to concede a lot of the ability to play primary later in the game, and the threat of the all-in is entirely gone by moving backwards like this. These dogs end up staying still, but we do end up having these 2 dogs moving out this way. Maybe they only move 12, not as fast as I was kind of expecting. But we are already in a position where, you know, if he hits this charge and this charge, it's unfortunate, but it's okay. If he hits like this charge again, it's unfortunate, but it's okay. We're going to be able to kill a ton of dogs that have been set out in the open in just a moment. Again, not having the -1 to hit here, not having the -1 to hit in like any of these lines does ask a lot of questions about the dogs. But as they come in, cleans up some engineers, cleans up the scions, does some damage to this Cadian unit, does some damage to this Chimera. I think you do, like, there's some errant shots here. They don't really do any damage, and then indirect cleans up like 1 or 2 small units. But going into it, the really important thing is the charges, and only 1 charge and fight ends up happening. This War Dog ends up rolling a 12, and you can see 1 dude here. We'll talk about that in a sec, but this was like an 11, or I think he declared an 11 and it failed. This was like an 8 or something, and it failed. So having only 1 charge going off is totally fine. Now this is after all of the attacks have been made, and you might see this 1 dude. David does do a little bit of a coherency trick here. The big thing is, so let's say you got like 10 dudes over here, okay? And I'm going to change colors, ink color, blue. And you get charged over here, and we're going to add 1 more color to be, let's use green. Sorry to my colorblind folks. And you have something over here that this is, wrong color. That this is close enough to pile in or consolidate into. Okay. What happens when this swings into this unit is you can kill things out of coherency like this, such that this one guy here is no longer coherent with the rest of the unit. This does a couple things for you. One, this will die at the end of the turn, which happens distinctly after the consolidate phase. So because this dog is touching the dude, it will not get to make a movement when it consolidates, meaning it cannot come touch or door. The other big thing is when this guy dies from coherency, is this unit over here is no longer engaged. So, I mean, it's the Cadians or the Castellan do have fallback and shoot, but now that they aren't engaged at all, they can just normal move and shoot and charge. So you can still do a whole lot of other things. And David does do this. He ends up killing off a couple of guys here. This guy does end up dying to coherency in a moment. Here's a cute little technical thing that does give you pseudo fallback and shoot on all of your units if you can pull these coherency tricks. Okay, but overall, extend battle lines comes through, 4 points here, and then he actually gets 4 points here on engage on all fronts because you do get past the midline with this dog. So good secondaries for our opponents, good primer for opponents, and it's a lot of points coming out for the Chaos Knights right away. Okay, going back in, let's go ahead and identify some goals for this turn for Guard. So the big thing to think about here is, one, our ability to put pressure on this objective is largely gone at this point, right? We are not going to be able to put anything in a spot where it's going to be taking this objective unless we're going to be hitting very long charges. So we have to try and find ways to deal with the primary in other ways. If Cameron gets another 13 on the next turn, it's going to be bad, which is part of why we really wanted to limit the 13 to an 8 on going into turn 2. However, this gives us opportunities to do a lot of damage. So one of the big things, we really want to kill this knight. We're going to kill this knight. We're going to kill this knight. We are very likely killing both of these knights with all the shooting we have available. This Dorn is unengaged, can shoot down here, can shoot down here. Kazarkin can come over here, help out. This Dorn can move this way. These Kazarkin and this stuff can move this way in order to kill this. And we are realistically killing probably 5 dogs this turn. If we want, we can also drop signs in a couple of different places. Maybe drop them here in the middle objective in order to try and kill this one. I don't think there is any space down here. There's definitely not any space over here. So we can consider dropping signs if we want to try and get another knight somewhere. But those are the main goals. We're just really trying to alleviate pressure on the rest of the board. And we're really looking for ways in order to hold our opponent down to an 8 here instead of getting another 13. So, the other fact that we only got a 3, so we're down 13 to 3. Does put us minus 10 on primary, which is, it's not like an emergency, but you start being like, okay, I do need to start doing some things. So as we go into this, understanding the win condition for our opponent of getting another 13, I think Cameron makes probably the single biggest mistake of the game. And that is, as we start doing movement over here, this Kazarkin unit is the thing that moves first, and then the War Dog reactively moves away. And I think this is probably the decision that is the worst decision that I saw this game. And I'm going to really encourage people to take a moment and pause if you're trying to figure it out for yourself. Why is this reactive move so bad? So I'll give you a moment to pause, think about it. And let's come back in. Okay, so if you've already thought about it, there's a couple of different things that we could have done with this Chaos Knight, with this War Dog. So start it off like right about here. Let's go ahead and go back. So it's here, and it ends up moving back. We really, really, really need to protect this knight, because this knight is our path to getting that 13. We're probably holding this. We're almost definitely holding this. We're definitely holding our home. This is the one that is up in the air. We know that we can't drop scions over here. We know that if the scions were to drop, excuse me, if the Scions were to drop somewhere else, they would not be able to shoot because of the terrain corner right here. We need this knight to be safe, and this knight is dead, right? There's nothing we can do in order to keep that knight alive. So, what I really would have liked to have done with this Chaos Knight is a couple of things. The first one is after the Khazarkin move up, see if there is still enough space to move this knight in the way. Okay? If that is not possible, the other thing I really would have liked to do is have this Chaos Knight move to here, right? Just be in this space. And why do I want the Chaos Knight to be there? Why do I want the Warlock there? The main reason why is the only way this War Dog is going to die is if the Scions in this Chimera can disembark in this spot. And if we have a War Dog there, then the Scions can't get there, right? Because what we end up seeing is this Chimera ends up moving immediately after the War Dog comes out over here and drops all the Scions here. And these Scions are pretty consistently going to be killing this War Dog on an objective. You get the full rerolls to wound. You have access to the Mordian Minute, which takes your Plasma to Strength 9 and your Melta to Strength 10. So you're full rerolling Meltas wounding on 3s. You're full rerolling Plasmas wounding on 4s. And then the rest of your shots don't, they're still wounding on 6s rerolling, but your ability to kill this War Dog is way, way, way higher with this stratagem. And you have access to it at all. So this reactive move right here from Cameron lost the thread a little bit and ends up holding himself to an 8 because he reactive moved in the wrong direction. Other stuff that happened, this Dorn moved out, can draw line of sight down here. This Dorn couldn't really move. Can see here, can see here. Nork and friends moved out a little bit here in order to help out this. And then we dropped 20 Scions in the middle of the board. They're going to be contributing fire here, here, and I think they also shoot here a little bit. Okay, so our opponent has solved one of our problems for us. As we get into the shooting phase, a lot of shooting goes out. This dies to, I think it's like Melta guns and just fire from here. This dies to some shooting from the Dorn and the Khazarkin. These die to a mix of shooting long range. Again, remember, not having a -1 to hit from either of these Dorns. And then these Scions end up splitting fire, helping to kill these two, and doing some number of damage to this dog over here. Over here, David makes a little bit of a mistake. So this ends up shooting all of its fire there. But the big mistake is this Chimera ends up shooting like las guns and like a hunter killer at stuff over this way. And he doesn't even shoot the flamers at all. And this War Dog ends up living on 1. Which, it's not on the objective. It's not the end of the world. You can overwatch it. There's lots of ways to deal with it. But the main problem that it brings up happens immediately afterwards. So we've ended up solving one of our main goals, which was killing 5 dogs. And one of the fun things that happened like in the chat, if you were watching War Games Live, is Joe asked, he put up a poll. It's like, how many dogs do you think die this turn? His categories were like, or less than 3 heart, 3 or 4, and then 5+. I was very confidently in the 5+ dogs are dying. And I think about 30% of the chat was into that. But realistically, 5 dogs are almost always dying this turn. However, we immediately get into a spot where David makes a rules error. And if you were watching the game, I don't think a ton of people noticed this error, but it is it is potentially impactful. And the error was these Scions started the turn in this Chimera that was over here. Chimera moved, then the dudes got out. If you get out of a transport that has moved already, you are not allowed to declare a charge out of the transport. This is a pretty big mistake. This is something that does happen. There's a little bit of leeway that we can give because it is round 6. And is also, this was probably the longest turn of the game, one of the longest shooting phases that you're going to take. So it was just a long turn, and it's very possible that David just forgot. His opponent also forgot. Several people in chat, like when someone else brought it up to Joe, Joe forgot. or like thought something else had happened. A lot of people were in the spot where they didn't realize that this wasn't legal in the moment. However, um, the big thing here is when the charge goes off, the war dog was only on one wound, and the Scions do end up punching it to death. If you are interested in what happened afterwards, I did let David know after because he popped into my Discord and said, "Hey, how bad am I?" I let him know this happened. He, once he was made aware of it, went to go talk to the judges. The judges issued him a yellow card and a 10-point penalty. So he did just take a -10 afterwards, but he was still awarded the game win um, after having made this mistake. The actual mistake probably is the difference between David scoring 5 points on this objective or not. I think it's definitely the difference between him scoring 5 points on the objective or not. But also the War Dog. It maybe should have just been dead because the Chimera shoots flamers at it and kills it. So, like, maybe the dog is supposed to be dead, but these Scions are definitely supposed to just be here. Okay. Overall, though, we have accomplished all of our major goals. We've killed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dogs for sure, and then a 6th dog with an asterisk. So we've done a pretty good job. We have held our opponents. Our opponent's getting a 13 to our 3, and then an 8 to, we should honestly expect probably a 3 again. We should expect basically everything here to be dead. And then this maybe dies, but there's not a ton of assets over on this side of the board. So we're getting either a 3 or maybe an 8. Okay. So going into the third turn, taking quick stock of everything again, the differential is not nothing, right? Our opponent has already scored, like we said, 13 points of primary. They're going to get an 8 because they hold this objective next, and but we've killed a lot of robots, right? We've killed a lot of the war dogs. We have a lot more control over what's happening. This war dog, I think, is on 6, so it is at risk of just getting overwatched. And then these 2 war dogs are not realistically in a spot where they're going to be charging into our Dorn. So if they come out to try and deal with these Kazarkin, this Dorn can come over here, kill 1, maybe both. Nork's unit is also relatively late into the game, is now free to go play the game. It's still a really annoying unit. Nork can plausibly just punch half a War Dog's health away, and you have a bunch of Melta, bunch of Plasma. They're going to be a real combat unit here very soon. This is relative, like it's like decently safe. Your opponent is going to really have to deal with, can you kill all of this? And the answer is like maybe. The volume is kind of not there because you killed a bunch of the brigands already. But from Cameron's point of view, he needs to find ways to, one, make sure that David does not score this. He wants David to not score this, and David is not scoring this one. So if Cameron can find a way to safely put like a dog over here, kill this, and then commit the minimum to actually killing all the Scions here in the middle, he might be in a decent spot. So as we go into the movement phase, his Plague Bearers are free to move up. This dog moves up. This dog stands still, so it's not to get overwatched, but this one does come out into the middle. And then the back dog comes over this way, and there was a whole thing about trying to make sure he was not getting overwatched by a Dorn when he came out over this way, so he does choose to take a slightly longer charge than he potentially needed to, but it's still like a 4 or something. Shooting goes through, kills most of the Scions. We do a little bit of damage over here, hit this charge, and then he does like some pings with his mortar hats around. It's not super impressive, but you do kill a fair amount. Oh, speaking of, so you can't really see it because Cameron's arm is in the way here. But remember how he said the shoot on death ends up killing like 4 to 6 Scions in the open? There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like 6 Scions right here, split between 2 different units. He had 2 brigands over here, and he currently has 3 CP. So remember how I said avoiding the shooting death was a really big deal? He plausibly could have killed one of these Scion units, or at least like brought it really low a turn previously when the Scion units had split fired down over here and actually killed at least 1, maybe 2 of them. So there's like currently 6 bodies here. Realistically, that could have been 2 or 0 depending on how well Cameron had actually rolled. Okay, going into the charge phase. This War Dog charges, kills unit Kazakhin. Um, this War Dog charges, splits the command squad, and then leaves just has like one. There's a character and a medic in one command squad, and then there's a medic in another command squad. He kills all of the regular scions, and over here he does hit the charge. Fortunately, just doesn't have a lot of attacks. Doesn't do that much damage over here. So overall, ends up killing just another Kazakhin. This War Dog is fairly safe. This War Dog is going to die. This War Dog is going to die. So we are very rapidly approaching a spot where if David starts passing some battle shocks, if he rolls really hot on rezzing dudes, he could potentially even get a 13. So it went 13, 3, 8, and then this is a big question mark, right? If he passes a battle shock up here, he's going to get an 8. If he rolls hot on his rezzes here and passes the battle shocks here, he could potentially get a 13. And if he gets this 13, the game just ends on the spot. So as we go into the command phase, he rezzes like decently. He does get the flag, so he has 2 OC here, or 4 OC off of these guys, and then if these guys pass their battle shock and these guys pass their battle shock, he will end up taking the objective. Over here, he rezzes pretty good. If he passes that battle shock, he will get more primary there. He does end up passing this battle shock, and he fails one or both of these in the middle, so he does only get an 8. So we've gone 13, 3, 8, 8. So we are currently minus 10 overall on primary, and we're expecting to get like plus 7-ish towards the end of the game. So realistically, we're looking at minus 3, which we have made up for by drawing a little bit better on our secondaries overall. So we are still in the spot where we need to stop our opponent from scoring points. Okay, so as we get into it, how do we do that? 1, this dog needs to die. This dog needs to die. And this dog needs to die. We would like to kill this dog, but it's like a stretch goal. And this one, I don't know if we can get access to. That's one of the big things that I was kind of curious about that David didn't really look at is I don't think the Dorn definitely doesn't fit past this, but I call it barrel poking. If you take like your main Dorn and put the barrel like this, the question then becomes, does that give you an angle? I don't think it does, but I don't think David looked for it, so it probably doesn't. Anyway, we're going to start moving stuff out. We're going to start taking control of this. This is going to become uninteractable by potentially moving the Sans into the back over there. But what David ends up doing, he ends up just moving his entire army forward. And this reactive move also, I don't really understand very much. It doesn't change, right? Like this dog is still just dead, and it's not protecting this dog over here in any meaningful way. Yeah. I think what you probably could have been looking to do here is take this dog when these guys make a fallback. This dog can move like over this way, or you could potentially look for when these guys make a fallback, this dog can potentially reactive move back behind over here. So this is the second reactive move from Cameron that I think ends up not really working out in his favor. But overall, we're setting ourselves up. This can get a charge off. This does have line of sight here, so that's one of the things where this could have, come and hid. And this dog also could have maybe hid. So you could have ended up preserving a dog somewhere on the board, but this does not preserve a dog. As we get into the shooting phase, this Dorn, mag dumps here, this Dorn, and these Kazakhin, we end up killing this one and this one. And then this one takes a little bit of damage, but one of the main things that David was trying to do was he was trying to get Nork and friends to actually charge onto here. We end up charging the Nurglings, just tie them up. We end up charging Nork over here, tie that up. I think leaves this dog on 1. And then honestly, from this position, the game is kind of over. So just looking at the primary, it is a 13 for Cameron to a 3. And then it was an 8, and David got an 8. What do you call it? Cameron is going to get another 8 by holding home and this one. And then realistically, we are very reasonably looking at David getting a 13 because he's going to hold his home. He's very likely to hold this one, and he's also going to be holding this one. And then from there, Cameron's probably not holding anything but his home on the last turn. So 3, and then after David cleans up everything, he'll be looking at a 15. So minus 10, 0, plus 5, and then plus 12 at the end. So it ends up being plus 17 minus 10, plus 7 points of primary coming out for David is what we were expecting to see over the course of the rest of this game. Does Cameron have anything that he can do to stop that? Not really. Unfortunately, because the reactive move here, or the reactive move didn't happen here, the reactive move didn't happen here. He just doesn't have the assets left in the game. If he makes a charge over here and puts this 20 OC on the objective, it maybe flips a primary so that David is only plus 2, but this is a lot of OC. It can be OC3 on most of the bodies, and they're probably punching this to death, and it's going to res D3. These guys are going to res D3. This is going to res D3. This is 5 OC, can be 6. Like, this is a lot of primary, or a lot of OC on this primary. It's not obvious to me what happens if the charge actually hits. But as we go through, charge happens here, charge fails here. This one gets punched to death by Nork in a moment. And so as we look at it, the game kind of gets more or less ends kind of what we were expecting. There's not a whole lot left to really talk about. This will end up falling back and scoring a couple more behind enemy lines points. All this will die, and that's about it. So looking at the end score, again, so it was the 3, 8, 13, and then 15, and then 13, 8, 8, 3, kind of like we were expecting. So it ends up being David. I'm going to switch colors here. Ink color, red. That might be easier to read. So it ends up being, like we said, minus 10, 0, plus 5, and then plus 12. So 17. He ends up being a total of plus 7 on primary. Realistically, as we were looking at before with the, where is it? This charge that happened here, it's probably not supposed to be plus 7. It's probably supposed to be plus 2. So we can kind of, plus 2. And then on secondary, 8, 15, 17, 21, 31. So 31 secondary here, and then 5, 9, 13, 16, 20, 24, 24. So it ends up being plus 7 on primary, and then plus 7 on secondary. With the minus 10 penalty for the charge, this ends up being a 70 for the final score. So he does end up winning by 4. This is one of those games where if we kind of go back, one of the major themes of this is if you're playing into guard with Houndpack Lance, you gotta go. You gotta go. You cannot wait for guard to take control of the game, because guard, I mean, we saw here he killed 5, 6 with an asterisk, but the last time that I played a matchup similar to this one, I killed 7 dogs in a single turn. You need to crash. You need to have that wave hit. You need to be asking these questions immediately. And if you wait, right, like, you don't need every single dog to be part of the wave, because you can have like this chilling out with the plague bearers. You can leave something over here, and you can leave something here that's relatively hidden. But if you send 11 dogs, your opponent's going to kill like 4 or 5 of them on turn 1, or like bottom of 1. But then you actually get to crash with the rest of your army. And if you can kill like all these engineers, and you can kill these Kazarkin, and you can kill engineers and Kazarkin and Scions and Chimeras, if you can do that with your army, and you can like touch this Dorn, you can end up getting into a position where you're going to be going like 13, hold both, 13, hold both, and then maybe it's like 8 and then 3. But this is like an extra at least 5 points here, and this can potentially be, like, if things are going really well, this can be another 13. So you can find yourself like another like 10 points this way, and your opponent's not going to be finding those points at all. Realistically, they're only going to be getting points towards the end. But if you tag the Dorns, they might not be able to do it either. Other big thing to point out is, again, from the scout moves, is this Kazarkin unit didn't do a whole lot. Ended up like chilling here, moved here for a turn, moved here, contributed some fire into War Dog, and then died. which is like okay. It's like not the worst thing ever, but imagine if it had instead started here, where it was like not getting shot down the line, and then moved on to an objective, denied 5 points instead of getting the 13 on turn two. Um, he was only getting an 8, right? And then you can still just by like standing like here in some way, the war dogs that are here are still not getting to your Dorn. It's just too far. So this is one of the big things I would really like to see. Anything else that happened? Obviously, of course, this charge. Um, and then this is something that we can kind of think about with our Death Riders as well. So I think this reactive move here. Again, I think this is the reactive move that I think lost the game. So this is something that we should be thinking about too with like our Death Riders or kind of our Ratlings as well with the move shoot move. Is where can we put this that it is annoying? We should not be expecting our opponent to bounce. We should not really be in a position where we're expecting our opponent to not do the damage that they need to, but we can stand in annoying places. So again, this War Dog was standing here. This War Dog lives because our opponent's models cannot stand in the same places that our models are. Um, and then the other big thing is trying to get away from firing angles, right? I don't know if this could have gotten 6 inches over here. Maybe it looks close, but this one definitely could have gotten out of the firing angle from this Dorn. But this one, we've seen at this point several times that Dorns will just kill dogs, and it's not close. They will just evaporate. Um, so we need to make sure that we are preserving assets. So this one can move into a much safer position by committing our reactive moves in other positions. We end up putting ourselves in a tough spot. The last one, this one is more specific to Houndpack lands, but again, going to here. Oops, ink color red. When these scions dropped, they shot at least one of these to death. At least one of them is supposed to shoot back, kill some scions. It ends up being a lot of CP that ends up not doing a ton here for Cameron throughout the course of the game. So just looking for opportunities to do that is a big deal. So those are the main thoughts. If you're playing against Guard and you're playing an army that also relies on tempo, you need to go in really quick with all that tempo. Guard is so good on like we can be very aggressive, but we can also play a more defensive style. They're both going to be difficult for our opponents to deal with. So you need to play to your strengths when you're playing up against Guard. I think that's the biggest thing. I think overall, David played most of his turns pretty effectively. I think the Khazarkin over on the right-hand side of the board were probably like the biggest like macro error. I think that one other thing that we kind of could have looked at a bit more throughout the course of this game is start I think having like the one like small number of Cadians here, I didn't really understand this because they are just in the firing line. Like maybe they're a bait. I wasn't really sure. But this is also a unit where it's kind of like screening, right? So this unit is like theoretically screening out war dogs from going up, down, and coming back over here. But one of the really big things that we can do is we can screen this by proxy, right? So as long as both of these Dorns are alive, I'm going to go back to this map. So as long as both Dorns are alive and one of them is chilling like here and the other one is chilling like over here, our opponent has to come in within 6 inches of a board edge. So that's like this line and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and like this line, right? So if the Dorns are here and our opponent even has something to rapid ingress, one, it can't strategic reserves and come touch the objective, right? That's not a thing it's able to do. It's too far from the board edge. But if they were to even have one in reserve and then rapid ingress like here, you go, cool, I'm killing it now. So they can't actually really come back here. And I do think that the Castellan break with Nork could have much earlier started coming out to hear what was going to be participating in the actual battle way faster. But that's the only other thing I really think happened. There was like one small spot. If you're still watching at this point, I'm just kind of rambling. Um, here. Okay, so from this position, oh, there's no ink. From this position, one of the big things that you can look to do is you can fall back, like these scions can fall back into this chimera and firing deck out of it. You only get two, so you can get like two of the melta guns or two of the plasma guns. But this is something where you can do, and then this chimera just becomes like a roving gunboat that has 10 dudes just hanging out inside of it. Um, so you do have to be a little bit careful by doing this, because if these two guys just like run and stand on this objective in a relatively safe position, there's probably going to be like one mortar still in the game that you do have to be careful about. But this was an option for this Scion unit to contribute fire on um, this turn anyway. It just runs a little bit of a risk. I don't think David did a bad decision by moving over here. It's just a different line. All right, something else you could have considered doing. Anyway, I hope this was useful. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If there are other stream games, a couple things to think about for criteria for stream games. One, I don't really think it makes a ton of sense to do teams games, because I don't know what their coach like told them to do. I don't know what they told their team that they are capable of doing, and you play singles and teams games so differently that it becomes difficult. If people really want, I could probably go over John Lennon versus Pascal Haberstroh at Pirate Cup. Um, but I kind of talked about it a little bit in my meta update this last week, where it just looks like John better understood the map than Pascal did. Um, but yeah, so tournament games, it's easier to do them when Guard lose. This is, I think, the first match review that I've done where Guard won. And then I don't really think it makes sense to do just like live battle reports that people are doing just like for fun, simply because we don't know how seriously they're trying to win. Whereas at a tournament, you can generally assume that they are trying to win pretty hard. Anyway, though, if you're interested in seeing more, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like everything. If you want to be part of the Discord, send me a message on Discord or Reddit saying, hey, I'm a part of the Discord. I will not respond to comments about the Discord in chat unless you have already become like a YouTube member and you're having trouble. If you are, you can also send me an email and I will be able to fix that for you. But if you want more coaching, if you want me to do this for your games, if this is something you want to see happen, also hit me up. I've got plenty of time right now, and if you are interested in trying to understand some of the thought processes that will help you get better at 40K, going over your games is one of the best ways to do it. For now, though, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.